The SEC. Georgia, the favorites. They are 2-1 to win the SEC, minus 600 to make the playoff, just 3-1 to win the national championship. 10.5 wins is the win total. And then after Georgia, Texas, a close second, 10 wins, 3-1 to win the conference, minus 225 on the playoff line, plus 775 to win the national championship. Those are the two clear-cut favorites in the SEC.
And let's start with the team that I think is going to officially be the team left standing at the end of the year, and that is the Georgia Bulldogs. I think they go back to the top of the college football mountain as well as the top of the SEC. And that number is actually getting shorter as we get closer to kickoff. Let's just start with the fact that the schedule is brutal. Clemson, at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss, home game versus Tennessee. This is one of the toughest schedules that the Georgia Bulldogs have played in years. But the teams that they need to beat, Texas and Alabama, is right there on the schedule, and they go to those games, and they're probably going to be the favorite in those games. Listen, Kirby Smart is the best coach in college football. Carson Beck, after his initial season last year, looks to be ready to lead a team to the SEC title game. They don't bring back guys like Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, who have been staples in Georgia's offensive attack over the past couple years. But this is the Georgia Bulldogs. It's five-star athletes all over the roster. All they do is retool, and obviously there's going to be multiple first-round draft picks on the defensive side of the football. So Georgia is the it team in the Southeastern Conference. Now, number 2 is where I think is going to be interesting. Chris, everybody has Texas Peg and Quinn Ewers and that crew.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, they did an excellent job last year, took it all the way to the college football playoff. But like how Nick Saban said, people think that Texas is going to come into the Southeastern Conference and dominate the Southeastern Conference. That's laughable. Nobody is really going to dominate this conference. So I don't know if Texas is the second best team in the conference. I'll start right there. Curious of your thoughts. You know, they do have a big matchup in week 2. They go at Michigan. I keep saying this. If Texas loses that game, everything we thought about college football coming into this season will change. But Chris, I think Texas is a playoff team. Are they playing Georgia in Atlanta for the SEC championship the first Saturday in December? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think Texas and Bama are both getting too much respect from the books, in my opinion. I know Bama's down at 9.5 wins, 750 to win the SEC, plus 105. So very, very slight dog to show up in the college football playoff. I just don't. I think there's going to be a year drop off for Alabama. It's going to take Kalen DeBoer some time to establish himself. Okay, that I understand. It's still Bama. I'm not saying they're going to be bad, at least not by normal human standards, but by the standard that Nick Saban has built over the last couple of decades. Alabama's going to have a down year, like 9-3, 8-4, that kind of down year. So I agree with you, Corey. Like, I don't think Texas is there as the number 2 team. I don't think Bama is there as the number 2 team. In fact, I think you're going to have a set of 3 or 4 teams battling for that second spot in the SEC championship game. Missouri has done a lot to overhaul their program in the last 4 or 5 years. I think this might be the year where it peaks. They're also at 9.5 wins, by the way, and plus 180 to make the playoff. I think Tennessee, consistent production there. Under Josh Heupel, I would expect them to have a strong year again. But the ones I have an eye on, to be honest, and they play each other in Baton Rouge on October 12th, it's Ole Miss and LSU. Lane Kiffin has built something in Oxford, and it's going to continue to roll. I know they lost Quinshon Judkins, and I do think that's going to be something that they're going to have to deal with and figure out a way to work around early on. But they got Jackson Dart, and I am super high on Jackson Dart. They are minus 130 to make the playoff, Ole Miss. You give me Ole Miss at 650 or LSU at 9-1 right now to win the SEC. I know that's an uphill battle getting past Georgia in the SEC championship game, but I like the odds of either one of them in a one-game spot at that price, plus 650 on Ole Miss, 9-1 on LSU right now to get there at the very least, and then have that shot against Georgia in the SEC championship game.
I'm going to go back and go through a couple of the things you said. Let's start with the Missouri Tigers, who were very good last year, and a lot of people are
Mm-hmm.
predicting them to be a playoff team this season coming up. We've seen that this roster really turned the corner. At one point last year, Brady Cook looked like the best quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. A lot of people high on Missouri this year. Now, the schedule is not the toughest. There's some SEC schedules that'll blow your mind, but they
Yeah.
do have to go to Texas A&M. I talk about Texas A&M in a minute. They're home for Auburn. It could be a down year for Auburn. They go to Alabama. I think Oklahoma is going to be good this year. Oklahoma comes to them. They go to South Carolina. I think South Carolina is going to be better than expected this year as well with that with that redshirt freshman quarterback Lenora Sellers. So I'm not as high on Missouri as
Okay.
everybody else is in the conference. I tell you what, though, the team that I am high on, everybody say, okay, well, it's going to be Georgia. Is it going to be Georgia, Texas? Is it going to be Georgia, Missouri? Is it going to be Georgia versus Ole Miss? Is it going to be Georgia versus Tennessee? No, it's going to be who it always is. It's going to be Georgia versus Alabama. So we
Mm.
disagree on that one right there. I look at the quarterback position in Jalen Milroe. I think Jalen Milroe is the best quarterback in this conference, and Jalen Milroe will get my vote for Heisman Trophy this year. I'll make sure I'm going into the season with a Jalen Milroe Heisman Trophy ticket. Now, obviously, they were still able to come out of this situation with Nick Saban. Not bad. They didn't lose the majority of the talent. They bring the quarterback got back, and they bring some players from Washington are going to come over with Kalen DeBoer, who is a very good head coach. He's won every place that he's been. The roster is there. Nick Saban is still going to be in the building, so I don't think they're going to get too far away from the program. Now, Alabama doesn't have as tough a schedule. Now, they got the big matchup. They go to the Big Ten foe in Wisconsin early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
A big, noon kickoff game right there. Now, they should come out of that 3-0. Then they got the monster showdown with Georgia. What we've known about Alabama under Nick Saban, they're the only team that can consistently beat Georgia. But in Kalen DeBoer's first shot, let's just say they don't get that. Then it's Vandy, South Carolina at Tennessee. Going to be an interesting game right there. Alabama and Tennessee have played some monster games. A lot of people are on this new quarterback that Tennessee has. Then it's
Mm-hmm.
Missouri and at LSU. So I think Alabama, I don't know. I just can't get away from it. Even without Nick Saban being there, I still think it comes down to Georgia and Alabama to see who wins the SEC. Now, I do think Texas is a playoff team. I think LSU is a playoff team. And I think the Aggies are a playoff team as well. A lot of steam coming from some sharp bettors hitting that Texas A&M win total. And if you look at their odds to make the playoff, it's kind of in that sweet spot where it's not as long as you think it could be. A&M has a monster matchup to end the season when Texas comes to Kyle Field.
Mm-hmm.
That could be one of the most viewed college football games of all time, and I think A&M wins that game.
I don't hate the look at A&M. I really don't. Lined at 8.5 wins, and you mentioned plus 240 around there to make the playoff is a decent number. If you believe they can be one of the, what do we think? Like 5 SEC teams probably make it into the playoff this year.
Four, four or
Four,
five.
4 or 5. I mean, in an odd world where everything else falls the way it. I mean, if the Big Ten has a down year, like it wouldn't shock me if somehow 6 got in. That's going to happen at some point if we keep this
Mm-hmm.
current playoff set up for a while because the SEC is that deep. I want to go back to one thing you said, and you're right. Alabama and the infrastructure of Alabama is in place. Everything that Saban has built over the last couple of decades. Jalen Milroe is back. I can't disagree. If you're talking Heisman, Jalen Milroe is a good look. And I do think that offense still has a lot of things in place that make it formidable. The thing about the SEC now, though, is that what it hasn't really ever been is top to bottom quality quarterbacks. And that's
Yeah.
what you've got really this year. Every team that's a contender in the SEC has got a quarterback. And so my worry with Bama is that for the first time in a long time, the secondary is a weakness, in my opinion. A lot of new
Yes.
faces. You still got Malachi Moore on the back end, which is huge. But at corner, it's nothing but new faces. And I think that could hurt them, especially when you look at the schedule that you mentioned on the road at Tennessee. Then you get Missouri at home. So if you stumble against Tennessee, you got to bounce back. Granted, it's at home to Missouri. You do get the week off before you got to go to Baton Rouge. But that is a brutal stretch there for Alabama, late
Yeah.
October, early November, at Tennessee, home to Missouri. Yes, the bye week, but then away at Baton Rouge, November 9th. I wouldn't be entirely shocked to see them go 1-2 in that stretch. You add in a loss to Georgia and maybe another trip up, whether it be at home to Missouri or on the road at Wisconsin, who knows? And I quickly get to 3 losses, maybe even 4, depending on how much shakeup there is and how much they adjust to those shakeups in the secondary. So that's the one. I think that's probably the one spot where we disagree, Corey, is Bama. But yeah,
Hmm.
Georgia at the top with some kind of contention from Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee, Missouri, and yeah, Texas will probably be in the mix as well. But the Michigan game, I see that as a loss. Georgia's a loss. You got to go, like you said, to A&M to wrap things up at the end of the year. A very deep SEC, though. And again, 4, probably 5 teams make it into the playoff from this conference. Yeah, that's where the big boys are.